He called me useless for years, until the lawyer revealed my secret. Welcome, this voice of Deborah, and I tell true life stories. The smell of hospital disinfectant still makes me nauseous. It takes me back to that night. The night I woke up in the ICU with a tube down my throat and my sister-in-law standing over my bed, crying tears I would later learn were fake. My name is Patricia Vaughn, I'm 58 years old. And for 12 years I was married to a man who slowly poisoned me while convincing everyone I was just a hypochondriac with anxiety issues. But here's what he didn't know. I wasn't the fragile, helpless woman he thought he'd married. And the secret I'd been hiding for the last 3 years. It was about to expose everything. This is the story of how I died 3 times and came back to destroy the man who killed me. Started with headaches. Small ones at first, the kind you brush off with Tylenol and a glass of water. This was back in 2012, 6 years into my marriage to James Vaughn, a respected cardiologist at Philadelphia General Hospital. "You're stressed," James would say, massaging my temples with those skilled surgeon's hands. "You need to relax, Trish. Maybe cut back on your hours at the library." I was the head librarian at the public library downtown. A job I loved. A job that gave me purpose after my first husband died in a car accident and left me raising our daughter Rachel alone. James had seemed like a miracle when I met him at a hospital charity gala. Handsome, successful, attentive. He'd swept me off my feet. And within a year we were married. The headaches got worse. Then came the nausea, the dizziness, the episodes where my heart would race so fast I thought it would explode. James took me to specialist after specialist. They ran every test imaginable. Nothing. Every test came back normal. "It's anxiety," James finally declared, and the specialists agreed. Classic panic disorder. Very common in women your age going through life transitions. Women your age. Like I was ancient at 46. He prescribed anti-anxiety medication. I took it religiously, trusting my doctor husband. But I only got sicker. The headaches became migraines. I started losing weight, 20 pounds then 30. My hands shook constantly. I could barely make it through a workday. "Maybe you should take a leave of absence," James suggested gently. "Focus on getting better. I'll take care of everything." And I did. 'Cause I trusted him. 'Cause I was too sick to fight. Because every doctor I saw confirmed what James said. I was just an anxious, high-strung woman who needed to calm down. But then came the night I almost died the first time. It was a Tuesday in March 2015. I remember because it was Rachel's birthday. She was 23, living in Boston, working her first real job out of college. James had made dinner, something he rarely did. Chicken marsala, my favorite. "To my beautiful wife," he'd toasted. His smile warm and loving. "May this year bring you better health." I'd taken 3 bites when my throat started closing. My chest felt like it was being crushed by a vice. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything but claw at my neck while James watched with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then suddenly he was in motion, calling 911, performing CPR, saving my life like the hero doctor everyone believed him to be. "Severe allergic reaction," the ER doctor told us. "You're lucky your husband was there. Another 2 minutes and you would have died." "But I don't have any food allergies," I whispered, my throat raw from the breathing tube. "Sometimes they develop suddenly," James explained to the doctor, his hand warm on mine. "It happens. We'll need to do comprehensive allergy testing." The test showed I was allergic to nothing. Not a single thing. "Idiopathic anaphylaxis," the allergist concluded. "Spontaneous allergic reactions with no identifiable trigger. Very rare, but it happens. You'll need to carry an EpiPen at all times." I did. But it didn't stop the second attack 6 months later. Or the third one 4 months after that. Each time I nearly died. Each time, James was there to save me, the devoted husband, the skilled physician, the man who refused to give up on his sick wife. And each time, I came a little closer to realizing the truth. The thing that finally made me suspicious was something small. Something anyone else would have missed. I was in the hospital after the third attack, still groggy from medication, when James's sister Diane came to visit. She brought flowers and that sympathetic smile I'd learned to hate. "Poor Trish," she cooed. "You're so lucky James is a doctor. Anyone else would have left you by now. You're so much work." She said it like it was a compliment. Like I should be grateful my husband hadn't abandoned his useless, sick wife. "James loves her," my daughter Rachel said sharply from the corner. She'd driven down from Boston, terrified after getting the call that I'd nearly died again. "Don't talk about my mother like that." Diane's smile tightened. "Of course he does, dear. I just meant it must be hard for him, that's all. Having a wife who's always in crisis. He was telling me just last week how exhausted he is." Something about the way she said it made my stomach turn. Not with nausea, with suspicion. After Diane left, Rachel came to sit by my bed. "Mom," she said quietly, "when did you start getting sick?" "About 3 years after I married James." "Why? And when did Dad's life insurance policy pay out?" "My first husband, Rachel's father, had died in 2010. The insurance company had fought the claim for 2 years, arguing about policy details. The payout finally came through in 2012. The same year I started getting sick." "Rachel, just think about it, Mom. You got $2 million. You married James 6 months later. You started getting sick 6 months after that. And now you've nearly died 3 times. And James is the sole beneficiary of your will." I stared at my daughter, this brilliant 23-year-old who'd inherited her father's analytical mind. "You can't possibly think." "I think you should talk to someone," she said firmly. "Someone who isn't James's friend or colleague. Someone independent." But I didn't. 'Cause the idea was insane. James was a doctor. He saved lives. He loved me. Didn't he? The 4th attack happened differently. It was a Saturday morning and James had made me breakfast in bed. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. A sweet gesture from a loving husband. I took 1 sip of the orange juice and immediately felt wrong. Not the throat closing, can't breathe wrong of the previous attacks. Something else. A strange metallic taste in my mouth. A sudden, overwhelming sense that something was very, very bad. I didn't drink any more. I set the glass down and told James the first wasn't hungry, that I needed to rest. He looked disappointed. Just for a second, a flash of something across his face that I'd never seen before. Then the concern was back, the gentle doctor voice. "Are you feeling okay? Any symptoms?" "Just tired," I lied. After he left for his morning jog, I took that glass of orange juice and poured it into a jar. I hid the jar in the back of my closet, behind shoe boxes and winter sweaters. I didn't know what I was thinking. I didn't have a plan. I just knew, suddenly and certainly, that I needed to keep that juice. 2 hours later I was violently ill. Vomiting, diarrhea, heart palpitations. James rushed me to the ER again, playing the worried husband, the exhausted caregiver. "She's getting worse," he told the ER doctor, and I could hear the tears in his voice. "I don't know how to help her anymore." But this time when they ran tests they found something. Elevated levels of a cardiac medication, one I'd never been prescribed. "Mrs. Vaughn," the doctor said carefully, "are you taking any medications we don't know about?" "No," I whispered. James frowned, concerned. Could this be related to her previous symptoms? Some kind of metabolic disorder? The doctor looked uncomfortable. "We'll need to run more tests." "But Mrs. Vaughn, this medication, Digitalis, is very dangerous in high doses. If someone is taking this without supervision..." "I'm not taking anything," I said louder now. "I only take what James gives me." The silence in that room was deafening. They kept me in the hospital for 3 days. Rachel drove down immediately and refused to leave my side. And in those 3 days, while James was at work, I told my daughter everything. The years of sickness. The near-death experiences. The glass of orange juice hidden in my closet. "We need to test it," Rachel said immediately. "Mom, if what I'm thinking is true." "He's a doctor," I kept saying. "Doctors don't hurt people." "Some do," Rachel said grimly. Remember that guy in Ohio? The doctor who killed his patients with morphine overdoses. And the nurse in England who poisoned dozens of people. Mom, just because someone has a medical degree doesn't mean they're not capable of murder. The word hung in the air between us. Murder. My husband, my loving, attentive, devoted husband, was trying to murder me. Rachel snuck out of the hospital that night and retrieved the jar. The next morning, while James was at work, she took it to a private lab and paid for expedited toxicology testing. The results came back 24 hours later. The orange juice contained lethal doses of digitalis, arsenic, and beta blockers. Enough to kill me 3 times over, administered slowly to mimic natural illness. Rachel called the police. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Once the detectives knew what to look for, they found everything. James had been stealing medications from the hospital pharmacy for years. Small amounts, never enough to trigger inventory alerts, but enough to slowly poison his wife. He'd been grinding the pills and mixing them into my food and drinks, careful to vary the dosages so I'd get sick but not die immediately. He wanted it to look natural. A slow decline, a tragic illness, a devoted husband who did everything he could to save his ailing wife. They found searches on his work computer. How to cause symptoms that mimic anxiety. Untraceable poisons. Life insurance payout timelines. Metabolic disorders that cause heart problems. He'd been researching for years. Planning. Calculating. But they found something else too. Something that made my blood run cold. James had a girlfriend. A 28-year-old pharmaceutical rep named Ashley who he'd been seeing for 4 years. They had emails, text messages, photographs. Plans to run off together once. Trish's health issues resolved themselves naturally. That's what he called my death. A natural resolution. In one text, Ashley had written, "How much longer? I'm tired of waiting." James's response, "Soon, baby. She's getting worse. The doctors think it's just a matter of time now. Then we'll have everything. Everything. My life insurance. My inheritance from my first husband. The house we'd bought together. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, everything I had." He was going to take it all and disappear with a woman young enough to be his daughter. But here's what James didn't know. Here's the secret I'd been keeping. 3 years ago, right after the first attack, I'd gotten suspicious enough to consult with an attorney. Not because I thought James was poisoning me. I wasn't ready to believe that yet. But because something felt wrong and I wanted to protect Rachel. Changed my will. I'd set up a trust that James couldn't touch. I'd taken out a separate life insurance policy with Rachel as the sole beneficiary. I'd documented every illness, every hospital visit, every strange symptom. And I'd started recording our conversations. Every meal, every tender moment, every time James gave me medication or made me a drink. I had 3 years of audio recordings stored on a cloud server that James didn't know existed. When the police came to arrest him, I was ready. I watched from my hospital bed as they led James out in handcuffs. His face a mask of shock and betrayal. He actually looked at me like I'd done something wrong. Like I'd betrayed him by surviving. "How?" he asked, his voice breaking. "How did you know?" "I didn't," I said truthfully. "Not until Rachel figured it out. But once I knew what to look for, James, you made it so easy. You thought I was useless. You thought I was just a sick, anxious woman who couldn't think for herself. You thought I'd never question the man who was supposed to love me." His face went cold. There it was, the real James. The one I'd only seen in flashes, when he thought I wasn't looking. "You were supposed to die," he said flatly. 3 years ago. That first attack should have killed you. But you're tougher than I thought. More stubborn. More useless than I planned for." There was that word again. Useless. "No," I said quietly. "I was never useless. I just let you believe I was. And that was your mistake." The trial was a media sensation. Respected cardiologist slowly poisons wife for insurance money. It had everything. Medicine, murder, betrayal. The courtroom was packed every single day. James's lawyer tried to paint me as a mentally unstable woman who'd fabricated evidence against her loving husband. They brought in psychiatrists who testified about my anxiety diagnosis, my history of panic attacks, my documented health problems. Mrs. Vaughn is clearly suffering from Munchausen syndrome, his lawyer argued. She's created this elaborate fantasy to explain her self-induced illnesses. But then the prosecution presented the evidence. The toxicology reports, the pharmacy records, the computer searches, the girlfriend's testimony. Ashley had turned state's witness, terrified of being charged as an accessory. And then they played the recordings. 3 years of James's voice, captured without his knowledge. James suggesting I take vitamins that made me sick. James insisting I drink special smoothies he'd made. James talking to Diane on the phone about how much longer he thought I'd last. She's tougher than she looks, he'd said in one recording. But everyone breaks eventually. It's just a matter of the right dosage. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found him guilty on all counts: attempted murder, fraud, theft, practicing medicine with intent to harm. The judge sentenced him to 35 years in prison. That was 2 years ago. Today I'm 60 years old, and I'm healthier than I've been in a decade. Turns out, when you stop being slowly poisoned, your body recovers pretty quickly. I went back to work at the library. I've started dating again, carefully, very carefully. I see Rachel every month. She's engaged now, to a wonderful man who treats her like she hung the moon. I also started speaking publicly about my experience. I've talked to medical boards, police departments, domestic violence organizations. Because what happened to me isn't as rare as you'd think. Medical professionals abuse their knowledge all the time. They use their authority, their expertise, their access to medications to control, harm, and sometimes kill their partners. And because they're doctors, because they're trusted, because they're respected, they often get away with it. I was lucky. I had a daughter who refused to stop asking questions. I had evidence. I had resources. Not everyone does. If you're watching this and something feels wrong, if you're constantly sick and no one can figure out why, if your partner is always there to save you, if people keep calling you anxious or dramatic or a hypochondriac, please listen to your instincts. Document everything. Seek second opinions from doctors your partner doesn't know. Tell people outside your immediate circle what's happening. And if you suspect someone is harming you, go to the police. You are not crazy. You are not useless. You are not making it up. Your life is worth fighting for. I think about James sometimes, sitting in his prison cell. I wonder if he ever truly loved me, or if I was always just a means to an end. A walking life insurance policy. Problem to be solved. Diane visits him regularly. She still believes he's innocent, that I'm the villain in this story. Some people will never see the truth, even when it's presented in court with 3 years of evidence. But I've made peace with that. I've made peace with a lot of things. The other day, someone at the library asked me how I survived. How I kept going when I was so sick, when the person who was supposed to protect me was the one trying to kill me. I told them the truth. I didn't know I was surviving. I just kept living. One day at a time, one breath at a time, even when those breaths were getting harder and harder to take. And somewhere deep inside, deeper than conscious thought, my body knew something was wrong. Fought back. It refused to give up. We're tougher than we think, us human beings. We're built to survive, even when survival seems impossible. James called me useless for years. He told his sister I was too much work. He told his girlfriend I was an obstacle. He looked at me and saw nothing but an easy target. But in the end, I was the one who survived. I was the one who fought back. I was the one who won. And if that's useless, then I'll wear that label with pride. Before I go, I want to leave you with this. If my story resonates with you, if you know someone who might be in a similar situation, please share this. Please subscribe to this channel so you can continue to hear stories like mine. Stories of survival, of strength, of people who refuse to be victims. And remember, the person who seems weakest in the room might actually be the strongest. Because they've survived things you can't even imagine. They've fought battles you'll never see. My name is Patricia Vaughn. I'm 58 years old. My husband called me useless while he slowly poisoned me for years. But I'm still here. And he's in prison. Turns out I was useful after all. Useful enough to save my own life. And that's the most powerful thing anyone can be.